Each summer day here in our little cottage brings something new to life. In this video, we're going to be extracting honey from my man's honeybees that he keeps back at the back of our acreage. I'm also going to show you one of my favorite finds I have found with antiques regarding the Etsy shop. And we're going to be harvesting some berries and trying to make some jelly, preserving it in the water bath canner. So come along and join me on this beautiful and ordinary day in the cottage. This particular morning, I am trying to beat the summer heat. These are berries that we actually got the starts from someone. They didn't know what they were. We didn't know what they were. And I had hoped they were red currants, but it turns out they are not. They're not a black currant. They're not a red currant. I think they might be a gooseberry, or there's another variety of berry that's a cross, I think, between a gooseberry and a currant. I can't remember the name. I think that might be what this is. And I don't really like growing things unless it's something we love and will make use of. So I am harvesting them this morning, and I'm going to go make a batch of jelly with them, and we can decide whether or not these fruits are worth hanging on to, if we will use them enough to make them worth growing. Now, to make my jelly, I do it all honey sweetened. And so before we can do that, we need to extract honey from our bees. My man is a backyard beekeeper. He doesn't keep a lot of hives, but we like to supply our own honey for ourselves. This year he had some troubles with losing 3 queens, which if you're in the beekeeping world, you know that significantly sets you back. So what he's doing here is he's breaking the wax cap that's over the honey, and then he puts it in this electric extractor, and it just whirls the frames round and round. And the centrifugal force forces the honey out of the one side of the honeycomb. It takes a while, and it actually wasn't quite hot enough today to get the honey running really well. But here he is, he's flipped it, and he's going to run the frames on the other side again as well. This process actually takes quite a bit of time, so it's messy, it's sticky, it's kind of an all-day affair. And so we didn't have a ton of honey this year, not as much as we'd hoped, but we still got a decent harvest. One of my favorite things to do when we're extracting is if there's extra burr comb, there's honey in this. You can see the glistening in the little holes. We will take that and eat it as we harvest. Now, I will hang on to the wax. It's great for making beeswax candles later in the year. But here we're going to actually throw it into a crock pot. We will melt it. The honey will be on the bottom. The wax will solidify on the top. And it's a really easy way to separate kind of the stray honeycomb. We've been extracting honey for a while now, and it's time to lift the spout on the bottom and let it come through. Here the honey was not warm enough. It's very thick. It should be a little bit runnier. You want the warmth will really help with that. But we do not do an incredible filtering system with our honey. A lot of wax comes through, and we will actually leave it in the jars, and again, as they sit, the wax will float to the top. We can easily skim that off a couple days later. And so the honey you see going into jars, yes, it is all those little white flecks, that's wax. But it saves so much time if you can just pour it into the jar, let it sit for a week or two, and then skim it off. And we have a separate jar that we put our honey wax in. And again, later on, we can melt that down. The wax will solidify on the top, and we will have the pure honey underneath. I love, love, love doing honey. It's such a rewarding feeling. And then we can bring it to the kitchen and make honey sweetened jams and jellies and preserve all kinds of fruit in honey. It's very healthy. I love that we're producing our own sweetener. We know where it came from, how it was handled, and it's just a very nice feeling. To make jelly with these berries, and I'm just going to call them gooseberries because I'm not sure what they are. They're really, really good for jelly making. You don't have to be particular about whether or not stems make it in or a few green berries. They will add more pectin and you will get a better gel. to juice them, put them in a stock pot, and just cover them with water. If you're interested in learning how to can with honey, check out my course. I will link it down below, but I teach you everything you need to know about canning fruits, pickled vegetables, all the things with honey instead of sugar. Again, I'll leave that link down below. These currants have cooked for about 10 minutes. You don't have to do it for long, just till the juices are released. Then we line a glass bowl with a cotton cloth. And I did let this mixture cool a little bit so that if something spilt, I didn't burn myself. And once it's in the cloth, we're just going to gather up the four corners of the cloth, tie it off, and then let the juices drip out. You can buy, they're called jelly bags for this process. It's a cloth bag already made up for you. But I like hanging on to these white tea towels. They're cotton and they just do a really good job. I'll actually put a link down below as well to the exact ones I like. I think you can get them in a 12-pack. And fruit stains things so badly, you're not going to want to use them for anything except extracting juice like this. After this has set for a little while, the juices will finish dripping out and you can compost the berries. Here is the pure red juice. It's beautiful. And I'm making a very, very tiny batch of jelly. Again, I don't like to grow things or even preserve things here that we don't love. And so I want to make a tiny batch and figure out whether or not those berry bushes are worth keeping around. I am making a honey sweetened jelly here. Now, normally that is a problem if you do not know how to do it properly. Honey adds liquid content to your recipe, which means it's not quick to gel. So I have a special tutorial for you over in my little mini course on canning with honey, and I will walk you through what you need to know to make sure that your honey sweetened jellies will actually set and not just end up being a runny, watery syrup in your jar. Here I am mixing a special kind of pectin into the honey. And then once it's incorporated, we go over to the stove and we add something to the juice that will help set the jelly with honey. Normally you would rely on sugar. Here I get to use honey because I know the tricks, and this is going to be very, very tasty regardless of whether or not we think it's worth it. Honey goes in and we bring everything up to a simmering boil, and we will have to cook it for about a minute before it can then go straight into jars and straight into the water bath canner. Honey is very thick, so it takes a little while for it to dissolve, but once it does, and it has boiled for about a minute, it can go right straight into the jars. These are very tiny jars. They are half pint. There's 1 cup of juice that will fit in each one. But like I mentioned earlier, I want to see if we love this or not. And if we don't, I don't want a whole bunch of jars of jelly that we really aren't going to eat. If you go to all the work of growing something and harvesting it and preserving it, the last thing you want is to create a whole bunch of something and then watch it sit on the shelf for 1-2 years. By the 3rd year, I usually feel like, you know what, I'm not sure if this is safe anymore, and so then it usually goes to the animals. Tiny jars like this don't take long to process, so I am fine doing such a tiny little batch here. I did also make up 2 other little jars of cranberry jelly as well. That's that for the canning in the outdoor world. Now I want to bring you along and show you something that I bought. A couple years ago, there was an old man in our community who was in his 70s. My man was doing some work for him, and I had commented on his dish set because I thought it was really beautiful. And he told me it had belonged to his mother. And he got remarried, and his new wife didn't care for the dishes. And so he was getting rid of them. So back when my man and I were building our house and living on a little shed on the property, he dropped off a huge box of these beautiful dishes. Now, these are not the set. I recently was online on a certain website, and I saw a set of about 20 pieces for a very, very affordable price because these are considered, I'm not sure if they're considered just vintage or antique, but they are beautiful. And so I bought them. Everything came, they was shipped, nothing broke. And I was so happy to have these that I had to share them with you, especially if you haven't heard, I am opening an Etsy shop. So I want to give you guys just a little taste of what I love and what will be in there. And some of it will be beautiful dishes like these ones. If any of you have tips on where I can find more of this pattern or tips on how to arrange china in a cabinet, I would love to hear from you. Leave me a comment down below, especially if you know where I can source a teapot of this pattern. Right? I hope you join me in this day in a life video, and I will keep you posted as to when the Etsy shop goes live. Thanks for joining me, folks, and I will see you next time.